between 1890 and say 1950, and you suffered from basically any ailment, from the less serious itchiness, gray hair, acne, to the more serious paralysis or tuberculosis, you might have been treated or been recommended to treat yourself with a device like I have with me right here. So what is it? This device is a violet ray machine made by Renulife company that was based out of the Empire Building in downtown Detroit for a couple decades in the early 1900s. So how does it work? A typical violet ray device consisted of an ungrounded electrical control box that controlled the interrupter and housed the magneto-coil, and an attached bakelite or other handle housing which contained the high voltage coil and an insertion point for the attachment. Glass evacuated tubes of varying shapes and for different therapeutic uses could be inserted into the bakelite handle to apply to the resulting current to different parts of the body. The vacuum within the tube gives the electricity its violet light. These devices, whether or not they actually work, look really cool. So here is the handle to our violet ray machine, and it's maybe a pound or two, a little heavy. It does have your electrical cordage, so not super portable, but if your house had electricity, you could use this. Or if you were in a doctor's office or similar clinic, you could use it too. And here is the end where the varying tubes would be set into. And here we have one of the tubes that came with this device. So this is the point that would go into the handle, and then you'd have a violet ray throughout this glass part of the tube, and it's flattened on the end. So this is something that if you were having, say, elbow pain, you'd lay it on the side of your elbow like this, and it was supposed to work like that. In the brochure that came along with this object, there are a whole lot of other tubes you could buy for various uses, including things that you would put into your orifices. And thankfully, we didn't get any of those tubes with this object, because I cannot imagine what sort of handling issues we would have with tubes that had been shoved into someone's orifices. The weird things that you sometimes encounter working in a museum. In the early 1900s, it was a prevailing belief, both in the public and in the medical community, that the body was basically a giant electrical machine. And by interrupting or increasing electrical charge in different places within this machine, you could either cause or cure various ailments. Anything from minor aches and pains to serious disease, and, maybe even bring back the dead, right? This all changed in the middle of the 20th century. World War II played a big part in that. Manufacturers switched from making objects for individual personal use to objects and things that could help the war effort overseas. And in the medical field, our understanding of how the human body and disease worked went under a major shift as well. So it wasn't just electrical pulses that were running things in the body, but everything from hormones to the environment to what is encoded in our DNA causes illness and disease. So could a violet ray machine actually help if you were suffering from anything from baldness to tuberculosis? Well, first off, if you're using this to treat baldness, make sure any hair oils that you're using contain no more than 20% alcohol, otherwise you're gonna start a fire on your head. No joke, that's in the brochures for these devices. But at most, what this machine is gonna do, it's gonna create a tingly or sometimes maybe a pleasant sensation on the skin, which you set it upon. And it was recommended treatment to only last maybe around 5 minutes or so. So best case scenario, the placebo effect would leave you feeling pretty good, and it wouldn't take up a whole lot of time during your day. Worst case scenario though, for say individuals who were treating someone who did have tuberculosis or diphtheria or paralysis, it gave people a lot of false hope. Hope that was ultimately going to be dashed through the use of these machines. This false hope led attorney generals from several states suing the manufacturers of these devices. And in 1951, the federal government outlawed the manufacture of these devices within the United States. Now, today you can still buy devices like this that were manufactured overseas. A lot of them are sold as adult novelty toys, which, don't you just love euphemisms? So, who owned this device, and how did it get into our collection? This is one of those things that it's a really cool object on its own, and it occupies a really interesting place in social and medical history, but the person who owned it was just as interesting. This was owned by Lewis Randall Sr. And no, he's not a descendant of Henry Randall, who once owned the Hunter House next door. But there is another Randall family in Birmingham that's been here since 1837. So this other Randall family actually predates Henry Randall and his family here in town. It's super interesting how a little village like Birmingham at that time had two families with the same last name who were unrelated. It creates some confusion in our records, as you might expect, but you know, it's just one of those funny historical coincidences. And while Henry Randall's family has a connection to the Hunter House, this Randall family has a connection to the Allen House, the house I'm sitting in today. As in 1879, Horace Randall bought the schoolhouse that sat on the site and upgraded it in a grand style, installing a water heater and icebox, making it one of the grandest residences in the whole village. Randall's father, McAllister Randall, was a member of the Birmingham Eccentrics, the club that lent its name to the newspaper. Lewis Randall Sr. was born in Birmingham in 1883 and, among other things, was the business manager for Birmingham Public Schools for over 30 years. And so this was donated actually by a woman named Zelna Randall, who has been instrumental in helping the museum acquire the history of the Randall family here in Birmingham. In the documentation that came in with this artifact, we unfortunately don't know why Lewis Randall Sr. owned this. Was it just an interesting thing that maybe he picked up at a sale? We do know that he did have it serviced. There is a receipt that came in with this object that lists all the things that were replaced or serviced at some point when he owned it. Did he maybe have a medical condition that he was treating himself for? We simply don't know. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Artifact Short, and we'll see you next time here from the Birmingham Museum with something else fun from our collections. Have a great rest of your day.